So, Padokun, you said something about 1 year is not enough to really rate this administration, but the popularity of the president appears to be dropping compared to when he came on board.
I will respond to that, but I'm honest with you. I want to run a little bit of commentary on what she had just said. It's a very serious matter, and you have asked us to come here to run commentary on the state of our country in the last 1 year. Let me tell you this fundamental truth of Nigeria. Nigeria had not always been a country of such corrupt leading epithets. Nigeria has not been a country that had no standard, that had no principle. Once upon a time, we lived in a country that was of such acclaimed honesty, decency, principle, to the extent that our social services were part of the best in the Commonwealth, globally too. Our education system was highly regarded. Our judiciary produced the best for the Commonwealth, to the extent that the likes of Justice Udo Udoma, Justice Akinola Aguda, even though Dr. Lo Nagorua and the likes were hired out, Udo Udoma became Chief Justice of Uganda. Akinola Aguda was the one who wrote the constitution of Kenya. So we had the best before. Our misfortune came with the advent of the Nigerian military.
Definitely.
The Nigerian military brought in corruption. Shebi, on January 15, 1966, when they came, their maiden broadcast was that they wanted to stop 10%ers.
And corruption.
In corruption, 10% corruption in Nigeria. 1966 January. What is it today? The truth of the matter is that they violently overthrew a legitimate, democratically elected regime, imposed themselves on us, and have been using force to sustain themselves in office, not for anything, not for the good of the country, but for their selfish greed, as well as that of their relations, including their concubines and their girlfriends. And that's what has brought us to where we are. Look, while we were in the University of Lagos in the early middle 70s, newspaper vendors will come bring their newspapers. They will go and supply to the department. Free readers will do their own free reading. But those who want to buy, they will take the newspaper. They put their money there. No one brass farthing will be missing.
Okay. So
please, corruption is so important for you to know the origin. Now, the military had, in the process, appropriated the means of resources for the Nigeria nation into their centralized government. They totally broken down the basis of the constitution upon which Nigeria secured its independence, which is federalism. They have centralized Nigeria. In doing so, they have appropriated all the resources to themselves. So they now, like all military or civilian dictators, despots all over the world, they've appropriated all the means of resources to the central government. They now do it at their own expenses. That's why the struggle to be at the center remains very fierce and deadly. So in the process, they acquired too much wealth. Corruption are taking over our land. Contracts of 1 naira are done for 100 naira. So today, I'm asking you on this screen, let anybody contradict me. Who is a rich man in Nigeria today that is not a military man? If he's not a military man, it was made by them. He will be a military surrogate, military sympathizer, military acolyte, military confederate.
So how do we deal with that?
So please, I'm asking. I'm laying the foundation that this is the essence of what Buhari was part of it. He came in 1984, put every person into jail, called them discredited civilians. And it was wrong. It was unfortunate that he did so, because among those ones in the civilian regime then, many of them were not corrupt. Nobody in the Unity Party of Nigeria could have said that he became a governor in 1979, spending 10,000 naira of his own money to become governor. How much do they need to spend now to become governor? Because, first of all, Buhari came and discredited everybody. Babangida came now to monetize and commercialize Nigerian politics. Hardly can you find 5% among the current political operators who are decent men, who make money, honestly, to go and run for office. So you don't find many decent people in public office today. Street guys are the guys
Where do we start from? Where do we start
That's
from?
what I've told you.
Corruption?
Military.
Because
Military came and brought in corruption in the largest scale. But you see, like I said, and I would stand to be corrected, the expansion of corruption in public and private life in Nigeria was brought in by Murtala Mohammed. So those who don't know, let them hear. When he came, and he was federal commissioner for communication, they were going to award this contract at the Ministry of Communication for telephone, cable laying, and the likes. GC, Philips, BT Telecom, and ITT bidded. He wanted ITT to have the thing. But when the technical people in that ministry, led by the late distinguished engineer Kindele, sat over the matter, they recommended GC. He was not happy. He wanted Akindele sacked. And because he was not sacked, Murtala went to Gawan. Gawan is still alive. If I lie, go and ask the question. Gawan said, you cannot be serious.
We really need
on the basis of that, nobody knew they were planning to stage a coup. As soon as they staged the coup, Nigeria Public Service Commission was disbanded. Akindele was sacked. So many Nigerian serious public servants were sacked with immediate effect.
Yeah, we need to still talk about, the issue of insecurity and, of course, job creation.
But this corruption thing is the thing.
Yes, she has said that
it's a foundation for what is happening.
She's mentioned patriotism.
Look, before we talk about patriotism, one of the greatest dangers they have done to us is this centralization of the Nigerian nation.
Which is not patriotic.
Look, what we need to do is to go back to federalism. The new federalism. We took over Nigeria. The independence was secured on the basis of federalism.
Okay.
Let everyone look. Federalism recognizes that there is a multiplicity of ethnic nationality, multiplicity of religion, multiplicity of artifacts, multiplicity of culture, multiplicity of tradition. Let us go back to that. Then don't concentrate all our attention at the center. That is where you have corruption.
Okay. Mr. Shomi, yesterday the Nigeria's former permanent representative of Nigeria at the United Nations talked about the implementation of the confab report from the last confab that was held. What do you think that will help in any way to get us out of the doldrums that he has spent?
Yes, but I will answer it by just in a second mentioning one thing. Mr. Yopadokun has made a very brilliant given the historical perspective to the problem, but we need to also understand that there is a current updated version of it, which is poverty and insecurity. Poverty in the sense that there are so many millions of our people unemployed. We have not grown up industries in a way that would enable, more people to get jobs. And then in the absence of any welfare protection for the people, people tend to think of how else can I support other members of the family, and then they become creative. The second issue, before answering your question, is on the issue of pension. When civil servants are at work, they know that they have not paid pensions for the past 2 years to those who retired. Then you create the insecurity, economic insecurity, fear and anxiety what happens when I join that league of pensioners. So they then tend to be more compromising. They find a way of being very creative and loot public funds just to ensure that they do not suffer in old age.
So you inadvertently fuel corruption when you do not pay their salaries and pensions.
When salaries are not paid in time, when, for instance, there are workers in this country that have not been paid for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. When you ask yourself a question, they have to go to work. The employer expects them to turn up at work. How do you expect them, to get to work? How do you expect them to survive? They have dependents. Their children are going to school. They've got to pay. So these are some of the issues which we need to look at if we really want to deal with the issue of corruption. So let me leave that. If you,
Mr. Malcolm, we don't have time. We really have to manage it.
Look, it's just to help you. What he was just talking about. You will never have positive results unless and until, if you don't deal with the report, critical report of that confab. If you don't deal with it, and somebody is imagining off his head, that because we have fought a war and 2 million people died, so Nigerian matter have been settled. It is law. It's a first leading of the thing. We must sit down as a people.
Okay. On the confab report, in as much as I am one of those who raised issues at the time because of the way and manner it was conveyed.
Yeah, but the
fact of the matter is, apart from the issue of resource control, which was not dealt with, and referred back to the presidency to set up a technical committee to look into it, every other areas were touched, including state police. And look, we only need to go through them. There are so many beautiful recommendations which will solve our problems. For instance, let me give you
as a Nigerian report.
Precisely. For
not
instance,
a political report.
Precisely. For instance, let me give you a good example. Look at the issue of reduction in cost of running government. In Senegal, voluntarily, scrapped one of the arms of they had a bicameral legislature. They scrapped one and turned it into unicameral without even a national confab. Now, because they needed to save money to ensure that the money would be available to invest in other areas to develop the economy. In our own case, the confab report also recommended the scrapping of one of the legislature, that is, move away from bicameral to unicameral legislature to cut down the cost of governance. And the National Assembly, as it is presently constituted today, cannot be expected to do that because they cannot scrap themselves out of existence. And that is the problem which we all face. How do we implement the National Confab report? It's a major challenge before, President Buhari. Another issue is the issue of state police. State police is there. If you don't need a federal police, look, go to any state now. It's all the states government that are funding the police forces. You then ask yourself, what happened, to the budget for the Nigerian police force, which is always appropriated. But the state governments are the one coming to the rescue. If not, they won't have vehicles, they won't have guns, bullets, and uniforms.
Because as they say, what's appropriated is never enough.
Precisely. And in any case, many of the state governments already have their own de facto state police. You call it RRS in one state, you call it QRS in one, all manners of things being funded by them. Look at the issue of solid minerals. Solid minerals. That's another major important thing in that report. That is, why must the federal government control solid minerals? Allow all the states to exploit the minerals in their territories. All the states are well endowed.